What's up, people? Skyfatal here with another new video, and it's against SupremePunisher. This guy's been running his mouth forever, so I'm just like, alright, fine. So I lead off with my sneeze zone. He leads off with his rampart off, so I didn't know what he's going to do. So he switches out, and he brings in Meganium. So I'm like, okay, so I go for the counter, and instead I go for the taunt, and instead I get the fail. He goes for the energy ball, and lucky for Sneasel, he survives. Barely, though. So anyway, my special defense is lowered. Now I ice punch him, and it's not really going to do anything because this thing is bulky as heck. But instead it does more than half. And so he finishes me off with the energy ball, so I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So, anyway, excuse me. He recovers his life with leftovers, so I'm like, oh, great. So anyway, I bring in my primate, and he switches out, and he brings in his little, Ninetail. So I go for the ice punch by mistake because I didn't know he was going to switch, so it doesn't do anything. So I switch out and bring in Hitmonchan, and he goes for the nasty plot. And so I figured this thing was going to sweep my whole team, but obviously not. So I go for the Mach Punch, and it does more than half, and he goes for the Fire Blast. I was hoping it would miss, but obviously not. So anyway, there goes my Hitmonchan, and he has a life orb, so I'm like, oh. So, okay. So I go with my Glaceon, so he switches out, and he switches into his Hypno. I go for the Ice Beam, try to finish it off, but he switched, so it does a lot. Well, not really a lot, but it does some. Anyway, I switch in my Sableye, and he goes for the T-Wave, so I'm like, oh, great. So, anyway, he recovers his health, and then what he does is set up his reflect, so I'm like, well, I wasn't really going to do anything. So anyway, I go for the knockoff, and so that, since he's not going to recover his life, so he goes for the wish. I didn't know what he was going to do, but anyway, I will-o-wisp him in the meantime, but it won't do anything because I sensed that his Meganium had aromatherapy, so he switched into it, and what do you know, I sized the toss. And it did some, and then his wish came true. I'm like, oh, jeez. So then he recovers his health with leftovers. So anyway, it goes for the aromatherapy, like I said, and now his Hypno's cured of burn, and then I get the HAX. So that sucks for me. So he goes for the energy ball, which is kind of new, or really not new, excuse me. But anyway, I go for the knockoff, and there goes his leftovers, and his reflect finally wears off. I recover, and then I switch out, and then I bring in my primate. And then he goes for the lead seed. So I'm like, okay. So anyway, so yeah, his leftovers is not going to do anything. So I go for close combat. I'm hoping that he would switch, but he didn't switch. So I lose. I'm down with -1 defense and special defense, and then he goes for the energy ball. I was hoping I can live this, but lucky for him, he gets the darn crit. Yeah. So I get really mad at that, and this kid gets really cocky with me. So I send him my Glaceon, he switches out, and then he brings in his Ninetales. I go for the Ice Beam, and it obviously kills him because he didn't have much left, so I was pretty happy about that. Moving along, so he sends in Medicham. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes for the Psycho Cut. It does about more than half, and so I go for the Ice Beam. I don't think this thing has a Salad Berry. I think it's Scarf, so it does more. It almost killed him. So I send in my Sableye, and he's like, oh man, you lucky. So anyway, he switches out, and he brings in Meganium again, and with that I switch out, and then I send in my Glaceon, predicting that. So I use the Ice Beam, and finally Meganium dies, and now he's like, oh man, I'm gonna lose now, okay, blah blah blah. So I'm like, yeah, okay. So he brings in Rampardos, and I go for the Ice Beam because I'm Scarf still, and it almost kills this thing. It doesn't have a sash or anything, but it almost kills this thing. So he goes for the Earthquake, and so I figured it was going to kill me, so obviously it does. So moving along, now that Glaceon's dead, I'm pretty much done for. So I send in my Minun. It goes for the T-Bolt, and it kills Rampardos. Now this is where the hacks come in. This is where he gets super mad. He goes for the Ice Punch, and surprisingly, Minun lives with 10 HP, and I didn't get free, so I go for the T-Bolt to finish him off. This is where the hacks come in. I'm sorry. Okay. He sends in Hypno, but he made a mistake, so he withdrew and put in Petalburger. And so I T-Bolt, and it does half to him, but lucky for me, oops, sorry about that, yeah, lucky for me, I get the paralyzed, and so he switches out, and I go for the T-bolt again, and I think I paralyze him. Yeah, I do paralyze him, I'm sorry. And so I go for the T-bolt again, and I get the HAX, lucky for me. So I T-bolt him again, and this time Hypno dies. So I got so lucky. Sorry about that black screen, by the way. And then he sends in his Pedal Bear again, so I T-bolt. Lucky for him, he survives it, but he finished me off with a crunch. So I had no other choice but to send in the Sableye, and we're both paralyzed. So I get the HAX again, and then I finish him off with a knockoff. Good game, SupremePunisher. Calm down, bro. It's just a game, nothing important. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Sub, comment, rate, subscribe.